All right, everybody, welcome back to the Healthy Swag podcast. I am rolling solo tonight for a good reason because tonight is a little bit personal and I want it to be a little bit more intimate. I do have two very special guests on tonight. I have my brother-in-law, Lee Liddell Lamb. What's up, boy? How
How
you
you
doing?
living, man? Good to see you, man. Well,
You
I'm well.
as well. You as well. You looking good, man.
Whew, I'm grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Feeling my age, but I'm grateful you would share that. I appreciate it.
Yes, people don't know this, but you were up late last night with dad. Fortunately, everything went okay with him. You had to take him to the hospital,
Correct.
but
Got
everything
in the ER about 5 this morning. Left.
have mercy.
Oh mercy! I think we got to the ER at about 7, 7,
Mm,
8. Ambulance had to get him. He was having trouble breathing. Lord richly bless. I appreciate your assistance on that, and
yeah, yeah,
because of the quick response, they were able to get his oxygen up. And at the end of the day, nothing. All the signs were well. He was
yes,
well. Pain went
yes.
away.
Praise God.
A lot of prayer. So really appreciate your support on that. So yeah,
Yeah,
dad is
no,
well. Dad is doing good.
yeah. I'm just surprised you are up and awake right now. So
Yeah,
that thank you
fumes,
for
fumes.
staying
Let's
up.
say that much. Yeah, full
Yes,
day at
yes,
work, and so yeah, fumes right
yes.
now. But I'm grateful, man. Grateful to be here.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. And then we have John. Now, I came across Pastor John Coaxum on IG, and I just thought, I said, wow, this guy is a pastor. He's a coach. He's a counselor. He's a therapist.
Mhm.
Like, that's a crazy combination. It
My
just intrigued
goodness.
me that he combined those two. And I was like, you know what? This is a great sort of conversation to have between all of us because one of the things that as you know, what I talk about a lot is sexual health and holistic sexual health. Well, we talk about the physical all the time, but we rarely talk about the mental and the spiritual aspects
Mm.
of sexual health, which get ignored or, don't get addressed. And those are foundational to our sexual health. And so when there has been abuse, when there has been trauma, we have to learn how to process that and to heal from that. And so that's why I'm so glad to have Pastor John on here to just talk about his approach to that. And so, Liddell, before you tell your story, I'd
Mhm,
like
mhm.
for Pastor John just to kind of just tell us the why you decided to be a pastor and a therapist.
Yeah, what's good, everybody? Pastor Coaxum. Been a pastor for over a decade now, close to 12 years. When I first started at Oakwood University, I was studying theology, pastoral ministry, and I always had a love for the mind. I wanted to sort of double major in psychology, get some sort of degree in counseling. And I remember one of my professors telling us, if you make God your plan A, then you can't have a plan B. In other words, he was saying, you can't have a double major. You can't do something else. And
Mm.
that really stuck with me and it kept me from pursuing something that I really feel now God actually called me to do. So later on in life, after I was in ministry for a little while, thank God for my wife who really encouraged me and said, yo, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And I went out and got my degree, Master of Arts in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. And I've been counseling for a little while now. My belief is that there are so many intersections between
Mhm.
the Bible and therapy or therapy and theology. I mean,
Hmm.
it's literally all over the Bible,
Yeah.
but there
Yeah.
is such an aversion in the
Mm.
church and amongst believers to mental health concerns. We feel as though prayer is the answer to everything. And that is concerning to me. Now, obviously, as a pastor, I believe prayer. I have seen prayer work on multiple occasions. I'm sure you brothers have as
Mhm.
well. But when we really think about this in reality, if you're outside, just a random example, you're dealing with some heavy machinery, you miss it, you break your arm, and I'm the pastor and I'm there, and I come over to you and I say, well, man, that looks really bad. Let's pray about this. I mean, you're gonna be
Mm.
like, well, I mean, thank you, but please call 911 immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're gonna want me to call an ambulance. And so we have no aversion to reaching out to a doctor that may be
Mm.
unspiritual or not, that may be
Mhm.
maybe an atheist. He may be a Satan worshiper. We don't know anything about him. What we care about is the fact that he knows medical procedures. That's what we
Mhm.
care about in that moment. Well,
Mhm.
if that is the case for when our body is broken, what about when our minds are broken? Should we not
Mm.
help? and people who have the gift of many different gifts of healing. I believe that counselors are in that category as well. And so I believe, man, God has called me to help connect the dots, to help people get from where they are to where they want to be. I believe that the Bible and spirituality informs everything I do. And I'll make one last quick distinction. I am a Christian and I am a therapist, but not necessarily a Christian therapist, right? And what I mean by that is that I don't incorporate, explicit biblical truths and prayer in every session that I have with a client. If they want it, it does come up. I've prayed with clients. The other day, I assigned a client to read the story of Joseph, as a matter of fact. It was a part of, the therapy process. But I'm not a Christian therapist in the sense that I only help believers, but the Bible does inform everything that I do. So I've had a good run so far. I love it. I'm committed to creating materials that sort of merge therapy and theology. And you'll see a little bit of that on my page as well. And happy to be here with you guys tonight.
Yes, man. Thank you, man. Heavy hitter.
Yeah. Out the park. Yeah.
Yes. No, we love it, man. And yeah, you're the perfect person to be on this call, man. And Ladell, you and I have talked. We've had long conversations about various things, and you opened up to me one day about just kind of what you were struggling with, and something that you really didn't tell people about, and it's something that we don't talk about. And thank you, number one, for coming on and being willing to be open and share your story. And I will just leave the floor to you, man. Go ahead and just tell your story.
Wow. Doc, again, thank you. Thank you so much for what you do. I love how you integrate your calling, work, and I don't want to minimize any of these by not having the right term, but I love how you what you stand for and what you do. So yeah, praise God for that. Really, really blessing. Well, bro, I thank you for this opportunity to share. One of the first things that I'll lead with, I've been afraid to tell my story because of shame. Shame has been a theme in my life, and I want to be free from it. And doing some work now with a therapist, richly been blessed in that regard. So I'm in process, but shame led out a large part of my life, and I didn't want to tell my story. And more I'm being nudged to tell my story. I think it also had a huge impact on my identity. I didn't know who I was, what I was called to do, what I wanted to do. And a lot of it was shaped from the story. So God is like, tell the story, share it. I want to heal you in that space and use you in that space. So identity and shame have been very instrumental in my story, my journey. Just early on, Doc, as I shared with Dr. Q here, I told him early on in my journey, I was sexually molested by a family friend. She was my older sister's friend. And for years, I told Q, I did not know until I was 30. It started at about 6. When I was 6 years old, all the way up until I was about 13. And I did not know that I was sexually molested until I was 30 and had a space to talk about it. Eric Thomas, we all know him, came into Maranatha to do a revival, and he was talking to the young people, and he had this big bowl, a silver bowl down front, like a tub. And after the week of prayer was over, his theme was break the cycle. And so one of the things that he really stressed, he said, at the end of this week, we're going to bring down our troubles. We're going to write down on paper some of the things that we haven't told anybody, some things that we've been struggling with. And we're going to bring it down. We're going to be free. God is going to break the cycle in our lives. So I wrote on a piece of paper, took it down front. And at the end, several people did it. At the end of the week of prayer, he, wrote things on there, put it in the pot, and he burned it. And he said, God is going to free us. And at that point, that night, I went into pastor study with my father and the pastor. And I told them, I said, man, based on what we were dealing with this week, I was sexually molested. And my father looked at me like, excuse me? The
Mm.
pastor looked and told them my story. And that began my freedom journey, if you will. I'm 51 now, so that was 21 years ago. And I'm
Wow.
still working through it. I won't say that I'm, just over the top, but I'm working through because I haven't been free to share my story about that. And that had a huge shaping on my view of relationship, intimacy, marriage. I was married for 24 years total. 18 fully together. We separated and divorced later, but overall 24 years. And in that time, sexuality, my goodness, was Doc, I'm trying to find the right word, John. It was challenging. We've had journeys. We dived off. We really loved each other, excited, well, more attached to each other at Oakwood. Met at Oakwood there, and we started like right out. Started right out sexual. Had a baby about 4 months, maybe 5 months after meeting, and barely knew this woman after he was born, my older son Lee, after he was born, we of course married. But not only did I have my son, I also had a second woman pregnant at Oakwood when I had my first, she was my girlfriend at the time. We weren't married at the time. She was my girlfriend. But not only did I get her pregnant, I got another young lady pregnant and actually had two babies pretty much about 6 months apart at the same time. So, and just these were some of the ripple effects of that abuse that happened from 6 to 13. Now, I was telling Q.
Now,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, so, Pastor, the pattern that you see here, this is not uncommon, right? You see this all the time in abused clients that go on to be sexually maybe promiscuous.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be, there's two sides to that coin. On one hand, you can be hypersexual, which is engaging in, risky sexual behaviors without a thought to any consequences, including diseases or anything like that. On the other hand, it could also cause some major attachment issues or the inability to form meaningful or foundational relationships with people. So, yeah, I've seen both as a result of sexual trauma. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and sex becomes the intimacy, right? That is the way that you feel intimacy is through that physical act. And right. So talk about that, Liddell.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. When the abuse started when I was 6, it started from, won't you come and help? I love helping people, as you know. I'm in the service industry of cutting hair. Love to see people transform. And so early on, that was something that I did for people in the community that needed certain things. And so my sister's friend said she needed some help up by her house. And we were down at my folks' house. She said, I need some help at the house. I said, yeah, I'll come help you. Went up to help her. We went down in the basement, came down completely naked and would, force me. I don't know if I want to use the word force, but will engage in sex. And so I was just like, what is this? I was, just kind of torn, but it just developed and developed. Like I would come home. There would be times that I would remember back and I would be so afraid to help, to go over to anytime she came around, it would kind of scare me. But then again, I started to get drawn to these experiences. Like I couldn't focus in school. I'm in the first grade.
Mercy.
So I could not really focus on anything school related. When it comes to women, I saw that women would be, naked and engaging because that's what I was being taught. And so, it got to the point that by 5th, 6th grade, man, it was like we were in a relationship. Like I would go over there after school, know what to do, come out of clothes, you know what I mean? And just engage in the activity at a basement. It was always, hey, can you come over here for a little while? To the point where when asking, I would just go over there after school. So as crazy as that may sound, my formulation of relationship was the sexual act. And this may be a bit graphic, but it got to the point where when I was at school and I got around other women, I would smell the scent of the woman that was engaging and, molesting me. I would smell the scent of, like, let's just say if somebody was giving off some hormones or horny, or if you will, I would smell the scent of what it smelled like when somebody would engage in sex, because the scent would follow me. There'd be times where I would smell her at different places. And I know that may not be super, but I think that started to shape even my understanding or draw to women. When I smelled the scent that I smelled on her with other women, it would draw me to that. And it was like this aggression to want to engage in activity with them, Doc. So I don't know what that's called, but all of that shaped me at a very early age. And so, yeah, it was pretty challenging.
It sounds like pheromones.
Okay, I think so. I think
Yeah.
that's what they're called. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what they're called.
Definitely. And also too, what you were experiencing is basically a trigger as well. The things that you were smelling, being around women, or that certain smell that you were smelling, triggered you to have the same response that you would have had, with a family friend that was there. And by the way, I just want to say clearly, man, I'm so sorry that this happened to you, and I really appreciate you sharing this on this platform. I just think that this is awesome. But I also want to say too, man, that the Bible says don't awaken love before it's time. And obviously I know this was not love, right? But the point is being made in the Bible that there's a box that God has not created us to open so early in life, right? And because that box was open in your life, this is what led to some of the things that you had to deal with ongoing in your adulthood. So I definitely see the effects, stemming from that. I'm so sorry this happened to you.
Yeah. And this is trauma, right? This is your 6-year-old mind doesn't know how to process all of this sensory input that you're getting. No one's educated you, nothing, and so you're learning on your own, a warped sense of what intimacy is, because your first taste of intimacy was abuse.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, it expanded from there. Pornography started in that basement because she would watch videos and turn videos on and would try to get me to emulate. And I know I may be skipping a bit, but I used to take those scenes that I would see and that we would try to engage in or reenact into the bedroom of my marriage, And so I thought that you had to be about this performance. You had to do it this way. And, all of that shaped a lot of what my engagement, what my intimacy, what I thought was intimacy with my, wife at the time, with my daughter's mother, the one that all of that shaped, because some of the same images that I engaged in, I actually tried to relive or emulate that, and it even started a porn addiction. Had to really fight and constantly fight with that, because the smallest trigger could unlock all of those memories, almost to where it felt like I was smelling her like right in 2024, and I hadn't seen her in years. So yeah, it would unlock quite a few things.
Yeah, and I think too, there's this book that I'm sure you've either heard of, maybe you've read. It's called The Body Keeps the Score.
I heard about it.
The basic point of that book is that trauma embeds itself in our brains and in our bodies, right? And so that when you are smelling these pheromones, your body responds whether you want it to or not.
Have mercy.
A pattern has been set, a pathway in your mind has already been eroded, to the sense that your body just is going to respond to it no matter what. I'd like to ask you too, I know you talked about, pornography. Did you experience for any length of time like an objectification of women, right? That women were just objects, right? To, to have sex with, no real, so you did experience that. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. That led into, like, a lot of my friends during high school, we would go to, I mean, Atlanta. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. So we took public transportation back and forth to school. So you can imagine downtown Atlanta is where our bus would depot to catch other buses. So we would get off and our playground was downtown Atlanta. So, I'm going from 6 to 13 to having these experiences. So by the time I'm in middle school, going to high school, we would take trains and get off, and there would be all these nightclubs. And I don't know if they weren't not just clubs, strip clubs, if you will. I mean, sometimes they would even let us come in at that early age. So, and I just began to see women just as objects, very promiscuous in middle school, high school, with just girls in the neighborhood. So yeah, for sure. There was a time a friend of mine that was in the neighborhood with me. It was like we would have multiple partners in the same basement, like next door to where the abuse happened. A friend of mine stayed about 2 doors down. I would be in his basement emulating what I did with her, with my friend, and just different girls that would come in the neighborhood. And so whether I was fondling, and I even had a real major experience where I had an experience, man, this thing really shook me. And I had to, I'll explain it. I had to really go through a major cleansing of this. But we had a family friend that we watched. She was probably, I was about in the fifth grade, fourth, fifth grade. She was probably in about the second grade. I ended up fondling her. And years later, man, I'm telling you, man, her mom and I had a conversation. Her mom looked at me one day. I was probably about 10th grade, and her mom looked at me and just burst into tears. It was like she knew what went on. Man, so you talk about, oh man, just melting a soul. But the very thing that happened to me, I turned around and did that to someone that was a family friend that we watched. And so here again in that pastor study, I had to go and talk to that young lady's mother and her. The daughter was not at church. She had left church, went into a wild life. And her mom said to me one day, I just kept saying, I am so sorry. Remember around that time of the 30, when I was 30, years later, when Eric did that revival, I remember saying, I need to talk to that young lady and tell her that I'm sorry and tell her my experience, not as a justification, but just tell her I did not mean to harm her like that. Her mother said that really shaped her. So in the Bible, in the pastor study, I met with the mother and the pastor and my parents and my father and told them what happened later, and brought my mother in, told her what happened, and just had to apologize to them. And then we all drove. She worked at a hotel. We drove just about 10 minutes down the road, and she was working at a hotel. And I remember going into the glass at the hotel where you check in, and she was behind, and everybody walked in, and she just kind of looked. She didn't see me. I was the last one that came in. I came in, and just looking in her face, it was like we went all the way back, whatever, when we were, fourth, fifth grade. I don't remember the exact grade, but she looked at me and burst into tears instantly. And I just, man, it was a melting all over again. So I had to get to the point. So these are the things that I've been shameful to talk about. I've been, and that really suffocated who I was. I didn't know who I was and how to manage. And I'm not trying to find a blame, if you will, Doc, but these are the things I just hadn't been free to talk about. And, that shaped a lot of my life. So I was able to talk to her. She said, look, I forgave you years ago. And she said, it's just hard to see you because that hurt me then. I was scared. And she was able to talk to me, and she said, I forgave you years ago. Mom cried. So it was an experience, but that shaped all of that. The experience with my friend, just a few doors down, the experiences we had with women, all of this, I just saw women as objects. So Doc, I didn't mean to go into this long piece, but that all shaped my thinking, and yeah, that's how I saw women.
You mentioned shame a number of times.
Oh God, yes.
As part of the story. And Pastor Quacks, can we talk about how to process shame? What that is, and how do we get past that? because that is a hindrance to healing.
Mhm.
When you feel like it's your fault, you're the bad person for, being abused, and then you just do what you've, been taught to do essentially. So
Mhm.
you talk about how to get past that, the
Yeah,
process.
absolutely. So part of the first step is to, acknowledge what happened, which, you're describing a situation where you're in the pastor study, I think you said, with your father,
Mhm. Mhm.
yes, minister. For you to even be able to come out and say that was massive and huge for healing in your life, and the fact that you're in therapy now. You'd be surprised how many people are just not even ready to acknowledge it, right?
Mm.
Matter is, I mean, they keep it stuffed down or whatever, and it actually takes, I hate to say it this way, but it kind of takes more energy, right, to keep something down, man, than just to,
Right.
to let it out and sort of deal with it. And people are fighting to keep things down. So first of all, acknowledging what happened, and then I think another thing that we have to do is to understand our trauma responses as well,
Mm.
which is what I'm talking about, which is triggers, right? So
Mhm. Mhm.
acknowledging, what our triggers are, acknowledging that, sometimes when I see women, I'm undressing them with my eyes,
Mhm.
and I know
Mhm.
that, I should not be doing that, so on and
Mhm.
so forth. But then also letting go of guilt and shame, which is what Dr. Q just talked about. We have to come to a point, and I know it's easier said than done, and this is really a big part of therapy. We have to come to the point where we recognize that something was done to us, right?
Mm.
To
Mm.
unlock this type of behavior. This,
Mhm.
this was, you did not have a choice. You didn't choose to be
Mm.
this type of person and to
Mhm.
make
Mhm.
these types of behaviors, right?
Mhm.
Somebody did something to you, and the blame and the guilt, it should not completely rest on you. And
Mm.
I can tell right now from the way you've been talking, you're saying, you know what, but I gotta accept what I did. And absolutely, we're not saying that you abdicate all responsibility for
Mhm.
some of the decisions that you made, but a big part of that would have never happened had this person not come into your life and violated you, right? In
Mm.
a real sense. And I think we have to go there first. We have
Mhm.
to put the
Mhm.
blame where it squarely belongs first. Then we can come to ourselves and begin to recognize, okay, this is why I did this, and then work towards never allowing these things to happen again.
Correct.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Understand.
What one other point though, if you could talk to at the point where trauma happens, normally we're sort of arrested emotionally where we were, like so he's 6 years old, he's seeing this, not knowing the process, not dealing with it. There's a 6-year-old little Lee in there,
Mhm.
still, right? That
Mhm.
that is trying to make sense of the world and what just happened to him, and so how do you unpack that part of I know we may not, but just
Yeah,
to the best that you can.
I hate to beat a dead horse, but obviously it starts with therapy, man. There
Mhm.
is a lot of processing that needs to be done, right?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
funny because I have a lot of men who come to me, and men, we're by nature, God has wired us to be fixers. It's just like,
Mhm.
tell me what to do. Like,
Correct.
I have to
Correct.
tell you, there's no silver bullet for this. You're dealing
Yeah.
with years, right? Of first of all, you're dealing with the initial event, and then years of not talking about the event, and then
Mhm.
years of maladaptive and negative behaviors, as a
Mhm.
result of the event. There's nothing I can give you in one moment that would help you, right? And so
Right.
actually for the first couple of sessions, man, what I tell particularly my male clients, I'm just like, yo, it's gonna feel like I'm an investigative reporter. It's gonna feel like I'm being really invasive, but it's not to be nosy and to get up in your business. I have to go through the house of your life, and I got to open up as many doors as possible. I got to look behind it.
Mm.
I got to look under the bed. Everything matters at the beginning. Your relationship with your parents. I need
Mhm.
Mhm,
to know what order you were in the sibling. Were you the youngest or the oldest? I need to understand all of that.
Mhm.
How your relationships, everything. And so for the first 4 or 5 sessions, literally, I'm just gathering information right now.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
Dr. Q is also right. I think that, I don't know about your case in particular because I'd have to talk to you more. But in many cases, when someone has been violated and abused, that 6-year-old boy or girl is still alive and active at 40. Right?
Mm.
mm,
It, it,
mhm.
you know, that child is still sort of calling the shots. There's still attachment disorders and things like that because of that experience. So
Mhm.
I think I just have to say, you know, kind of, you know, put it together. Therapy has to come first, and it's going
Mhm.
to take a while
Mhm.
for that stuff to be worked out. There's questions that need to be asked. And let me just add one more thing too. What I also find about men, we don't even have the language.
Mm, mhm,
Mm.
mhm,
Mm-mm.
We
Mm-mm.
don't
That's
have
so
the
real. That's so real.
to,
mhm.
to be able to communicate what we're actually feeling and what's going on inside of us. So most of my male clients, I got to give them a feelings wheel, you know, in the
Mhm.
first second. They don't even know feelings. I'm like, how you feel? I feel good. Well, good is not a feeling. Do you have anything else? I mean, I feel fine. Fine. You know, they don't know what to say at
It's
that
real.
moment. And so we need to help them do that. And that's because our society has has socialized to come to the point where they're not allowed to express their feelings or what's going on with them.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think therapy is the the best thing that I can say right now. There's no silver bullet for healing. There's no quick fix, honestly.
Mhm.
Mhm. Can I just say one more thing before
Sure.
we get to that? You know, it'll lead into you, Liddell. But you know, just allowing men to be human, just to express the full spectrum of human emotions. You know, we're not very good at that in society. And you know, his desire, like we've talked about marriage, we've talked about, that need for intimacy. And you know, I've been guilty of that too, as far as like using sex as a hack to intimacy, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
that's the only way that I feel close is that way, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
When that's not really the case, but that intimacy, and you know, we talked to Wesley Knight about this, and he really articulates this well about the spiritual connection between your sexual desires, and that the sexual desires that you have are coming from a real human place, and so his just desire to be loved and to be accepted and to be wanted and to be received. You know, he's seeking these things through his marriage, but he's seeking it through one avenue because that's the only avenue he knows. And because he wants that so bad, he's actually willing to even compromise some things to even not damage, but just live out of his, not in his integrity, let's put it that way,
Mhm.
because the desire to be loved is so strong. I'm willing to put up with some stuff that I probably wouldn't if I was healthy. Am I
Mhm.
am I saying that right? So can
Mhm.
you talk about that, Liddell, if you would, how it affected the dynamics in your marriage and how you
Mercy.
approached, yeah, sex.
Mercy. Yeah. The and I love how you position that. And one thing I'll say is in my relationship, whenever I felt accepted and not rejected, is when my wife would engage with me in sexual activity to the point where I can imagine I would see her just kind of kind of throw your hands, just be like, man, you want to go again? You want to do this? You want to, and so
Mhm.
she would be exhausted because she wanted me to be in a position that she potentially saw her father that I did not display. I wanted to receive love through sex. And she wanted me to stand in the position of manhood, but that was so far from me because anytime she didn't, I felt rejected and I felt dejected to the point where I didn't want to engage. I would close up, and I can imagine how that sent her on this roller coaster, if you will. And so these were the things that shaped my marriage, and ultimately, as years passed, after I started to, get some therapy, get some healing, I started to see how, man, this is not the way this thing's supposed to function.
Mm,
And she kind of got into this space where it's like, look, I need to be on my own island. And I really saw her cut off from the relationship. We had kids, so she participated, but I really saw her cut off and just kind of go aloof. And when I didn't get intimacy, I was trying to find ways to connect and build, but it was like we were just going in total different directions that we really was just existing in the
mm,
same space. we had several years, but it was more so existing than it was, grappling and working through things and trying to have, meaningful conversations. And so stuff that I literally like, we had a 20 chair business when I was 24 years old. Yeah, I was 24. We started a business. We had 20 people working for us, and she styled hair, I cut hair. And it got to the point where she was like, I don't want to do this no more. Just kind of up and left, moved to Nashville. We didn't have conversation about it. She lives in another state. And I did a lot of trying to prove to her that I was there and I was present. But I didn't really have the tools to work through really the rejection that I felt. Every time I got rejected, I just got secluded and just said whatever, threw my hands up. But I did want her to know I'm not going to abandon my family, if you will. So we had this really dysfunctional existence, if you will, John. Maybe you can speak to that. I'm like you said, I'm trying to find the word for it, but that shaped a lot of our years. We went into that to the point, like I said, when she left Tennessee, she then said, okay, well, I'm going to be here for 7 years. So just close the business in Alabama. So it was like my kids, I would drive up to Nashville, and then I would be in Huntsville working, drive up there to try to, make sure my kids were good in school. And I just was like, yeah, we can't do this. So left Huntsville, going to Nashville, stayed there several years, and tried to rebuild and start over when I had a whole business down in Huntsville. Then went to Florida. She just said, well, I want to go to Florida. My parents, they need me and they got good jobs there. Just left. So I put up with a lot of stuff that I believe if you go back to being in a better space of understanding, like, no, this is not the way we're to function. This is not the way we're to manage. So you talk about that, and then Q, you know the litany of things that I could express and share. I'd be happy to share whatever, but just to condense it, it was a lot that I put up with. Not communicating, not talking for days, being in the same space, like walking on eggshells, just being in the same place, existing, and not really being involved and really working and trying to integrate our lives and our dreams. So I just doing a lot of existing. So I try not to be too wordy, but those are some of the things that I just dealt with that normally in a better frame of mind, I know for sure I wouldn't have, dealt with.
Yeah. I call it the Adam syndrome, where because, and it wasn't all just driven through sex. I mean, you wanted your wife too, but you would compromise maybe what you knew or what you wanted to stand on, because you still wanted the booty.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, let's just be real, right? Yeah. And you were willing to tolerate some BS because you wanted them draws, right? Yeah. So it's like
that's how I received.
Yeah,
I thought that was love and intimacy. When you gave me sex, that was the epitome for sure.
Yeah, and that's when we sort of lose ourselves, right? And so, Pastor Coaxum, can you talk about that losing yourself, but then trying to find yourself again?
Yeah. I think this sort of stems back to, obviously the initial trauma, but also pornography usage is so huge. And I think I looked this, Doc, on the phone call we had. It is so rare for me to counsel men who have not dealt with pornography. This is how pervasive it is, both Christian and non-Christian, in and out of the church. And the reason is because, when we utilize pornography, it gives us a quick and immediate release from whatever stress or whatever we're feeling, right? We don't have to work for it. We don't gotta pay for no dates. You know what I'm saying? We can just get it done, real quick. All right.
Hit no mouth.
Man, we don't got to do none of that.
Yeah.
Definitely, in your relationship as well, like Doc said, you were just willing to put up with anything because ultimately that was coming, even though it sounds like you're describing not just a dysfunctional but a toxic toxic for you to be in. So And what was your original question, Doc? I'm sorry. Doc.
No, just because I think we lose ourselves as men, like
Mhm.
all of this trauma, like God never intended for Liddell to have this, right? So this is not the healthy version, the whole version of Liddell, right? And so somewhere he's got to find, and we all do have to find that that real version of ourselves, that version of ourselves that God designed us to be.
Mhm.
And that takes healing, that takes going through the painful process of dealing with that trauma and healing to find yourself, because that is the only way. When you know yourself, when you have this self-awareness, that's how you can build intimacy, because your spouse or your partner, whoever it is, can't know you if you don't know you, if you don't have a firm grip
Mm.
of who you are.
Mhm.
And so that's what I wanted you to say, or talk about, how do we build ourselves to learn ourselves and to know ourselves and to have this self-awareness through this process to be made whole.
Yeah, good question. I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying that. So, one of the ways that, we as men try to sometimes get our identity is through promiscuity and through
Mhm.
other people. And I want to ask you this, Liddell, like, because you said the abuse happened between ages 6 and 13, right?
Mhm. Yes.
Was there any time between 13 and, when you arrived at, I guess, at Oakwood, where you just had an extended period of time sort of alone without any kind of real sexual activity, without dating or anything like that? You know what I'm saying? Where you were just real single.
Absolutely not. It was like I had to have a girlfriend
Yep.
Mhm.
and then a friend of somebody when the
Yep.
girlfriend didn't
Yep.
participate that I wanted to engage in. Even going from high school, one young lady I dated, I mean, from like ninth grade.
Let's not say names. Let's protect the name.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
We'll
Ooh,
bleep it
I'm so sorry. Thank you.
out.
Thank you. So sorry. Dated her for several years. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah. Dated her going into Oakwood. She, man, my goodness, dated her. She actually, while we were in high school, became an exotic dancer. And so the pornography, that I was involved in, I would actually see it in real time, not just in the movies, but in facilities. And so she would do certain things. And so she actually, went on to do some other things in that arena. And
Mhm.
so that shaped a lot of going into Oakwood.
Mercy.
I mean, I wasn't even in college yet exposed to some of these things. So by the
Mhm.
time I got there, Doc, I was never alone. It actually felt demeaning. It felt deflating to actually be alone, like I didn't exist, like I didn't have
Mm.
a person. Like, what do you mean be alone, be by myself, when I didn't know what that meant,
Mm.
Right.
So sorry about that.
No, thank you. And that's the point I'm trying to make. That's a problem when our identity is filtered through, another person. And then you're talking
Mm.
about one person. You're talking about several people. I don't know how many people over time. And
Mhm.
you never have any time to process who you are as a person or understand who you are. And I'll just disclose for a minute. I remember one year in seminary, I spent an entire year, I didn't date nobody. I wasn't talking to nobody. People ask me like, "What's wrong with you?" You know what I'm saying? I just spent time with myself, and I just
Mhm.
say this to the men that are watching. That was the best year of my life. Was it difficult? Oh, absolutely. As a
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
and
Yeah, yeah,
you need to
yeah.
have a woman. It's like, who are you if you don't have a woman?
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
grew
Mm.
by leaps and bounds in that time because
Mhm.
I gained hobbies. I taught myself to play the guitar. I read
Wow.
books, my vocabulary expanded. I just spent time sort of figuring out who John was and who
Wow.
God had made me to be, and sort of, kind of articulated clearly what my purpose was at that moment, what I wanted to do with my life. Men
Yeah.
generally don't do that, right?
Mhm.
And especially when we have a traumatic incident like you have, it changes all of that so that we're looking for love in all the wrong places. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
I think, yeah, spending time alone, especially
Mm.
after a tough breakup, after a divorce, after a traumatic experience, is absolutely pivotal to our understanding of who we are.
Ooh, boy.
My Lord.
Dude, you said a mouthful. And to compound that, we as men, we
My
value
Lord.
ourselves based on what we do, in our activities,
Yeah.
in our
Who we're with.
accomplishments.
Mhm,
We're yeah,
mhm,
we're not satisfied with being. We're human beings, but we're not satisfied with just being. And I would say I would agree with you, but I will also say, even in a relationship, it is good to have some alone time. It's good to
Amen.
have some me time
Amen.
where you are cultivating your mind, your spirit, you're in tune with God, like all the things, because you are an individual at the end of the day. I mean, you're your own corporation,
Mhm,
and you have to be able to be okay with
Yeah.
being by yourself,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And
Ooh,
yeah, you'd be surprised how many people are, I mean, this is the right word. People are afraid to be
Yes.
themselves.
that's
People
Yes.
real.
fearful to be with their own thoughts, to come into the house and nobody else is there, and then have to sit there and think about, all the stuff that they're dealing with in their mind. They don't have the tools to be able to deal with it or to understand what's going on. They need to have somebody else there to sort of distract them from
Distract.
Mhm,
the real
mhm,
hard work that needs
mhm.
to be done on the inside. Absolutely.
Mm,
Ooh,
yeah.
my
Wow.
Lord.
What is the fear? Like, why do we fear to be alone?
Doc, this is not my clinical answer.
Yeah,
This is
no.
just to your point. Whenever I would sit alone, I had a friend that challenged me, Lee, spend some time alone and
Mhm,
listen. Don't try to make something happen, but listen to what's happening on the inside. Man, I
mhm.
tried that literally. I'm gonna say maybe 3 times. No exaggeration. All 3 times, the things that I heard, man, I tried to find TV, movies, Uno, checkers, you name it, just to keep away from some of that deep stuff that I heard in 3 times. Now, this was within the last, this happened literally about the last year or two. Friend challenged
Mm,
me. He read a book, The Superior Man, or something like that.
mhm, mhm,
And he talks about, I don't didn't go through the whole book just yet, but he talked about, listening, to to you, and just sitting with you, if you will. I'm paraphrasing, but bro, it scared me. I was like, what is that? Where's that stuff coming from?
mhm,
Things that came up, and I didn't have one understanding of what was happening in there. This may sound crazy, like I'm having some crazy. It was almost like having an out of body experiences. Like I was looking at myself, like, what is that? And what are you thinking about? You know what I mean? And there's just some like kind of wild thoughts, but it was scary to really sit there and work through those things, man. Scary that I didn't have language for it. I didn't understand it. I didn't know how to, man, you talking about crying. I could probably count on one hand how many times I've cried. Some of the
mm,
things made me cry. Like,
mm,
this is really weird, and I don't know why it's coming up, but I'll be happy to share it. I have a
mhm,
daughter, and one of the times my daughter was abused and hurt as well, and I was really angry at one time with her abuser. And I literally wanted to go inflict harm and whatnot. So, anyway, sitting with myself one time, I saw me going into a room to get after her abuser. And when I got really close to him to do harm to him, it was like I didn't see his face. But when I turned him over, I saw my face on the abuser, bro.
mm,
So I'm just like, what in God's name was that? So
Yeah.
God dealt me with that one thing in the time
mm,
of sitting by myself. He dealt with me with forgiveness
mm.
on forgiving the abuser, because he's like, what makes you any different than the
Wow.
abuser? You've had some things, in your past. And so I want you to, man, I'm talking about that thing broke. I'm talking about crying. I was like, whoo, called my
Mm,
daughter. We had a conversation about it. And
mm,
so that was one time out of the 3. So you can imagine, the things that happen when you sit with yourself. So, Doc, I really want to explore it more, and I'll be quiet and not say so much, just be wordy. But man, that thing scared me, man. I ain't gonna lie, that it messed with me.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's scary because it's painful, man. It's painful. I mean, you can think about something as simple as an embarrassing moment that you just don't want to relive again.
Mm,
Something on the extreme end, which is something horrific or traumatic or tragic that happened to us. Nobody wants to sit there and ruminate on it over and over again. And what happens is that at times when we have an alone moment, and it's just the crazy way our minds work, it'll just pop up in our mind, right? Or we'll watch a
mhm.
movie and something similar to what we experience is happening in the movie, and we get triggered all over again.
My
And
Lord.
it's even as deep as you said. You talked about smells. You talked about, I read a story about a girl, she was abused, and in the room was a ceiling fan that was twirling. And now, she can't be in a room with a ceiling fan because it just
Help, Lord.
reminds her immediately, of the trauma
Mhm.
that she experienced, man. So I
Mhm.
completely get where you're coming from, but a lot of men cannot take a moment, sit by themselves, and try to understand themselves because it's just extremely painful ordeal to go through.
Mhm.
You know?
I read something about, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but like, thoughts are thoughts. They don't define you. They're not you, right? And third personing yourself to almost say, okay, I just thought that thought. Why am I thinking that thought? Or where did that thought come from? And just kind of being your own, like you said, you had an out of body experience, like kind of being your own. Why would I think that? Why does this connection happen? And just being a little bit more analytical about it. I don't know if that's the approach because it's painful, but you got to get to that next layer. So how do you even, begin to process that? So I just heard the third personing, but maybe that's not the right way to approach it.
Yeah, I mean, I was smiling because I was going to say therapy, but then there's but another one
But if you're
is
by yourself, if you don't have a therapist,
right, exactly.
yeah.
Here's an exercise which I think you're close to. It's called putting thoughts on trial. Putting thoughts on trial. And it's an
Okay.
exercise where we, take our thoughts and we literally, we symbolically, figuratively, we put our thought in the witness box and we ask it questions. Is this true? Is this accurate? Does this really define me? And then at the end,
Mm,
get to decide whether that thought is made guilty or acquitted, right? You know what I'm saying? So
wow.
that is a tremendous exercise. I got a worksheet on that I use with some of my clients. I can share that with you. But yeah, that's probably what you're talking about. Yeah.
And that is biblical, right? Holding every thought captive. That's what that is, right?
Mm,
Holding thoughts captive, and then saying, and biblically, you're saying, okay, does that square up with what the word says? Right.
that's good.
Right.
Right.
Good.
Yeah. Does that line up? Is this a lie? Is this really who I am?
Mm-hmm.
Is this what the word says? And so holding those thoughts up to what the word says, could also be, you probably tell your clients that as well, that are Christian that want to
No,
go
absolutely.
there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, well, you wouldn't be surprised, but people come in with all manner of negative thoughts, man.
Yes, yes,
That lead
yes.
to suicidal ideation as well, because they think
Mhm,
of themselves as worthless. They don't have a strong sense of self-esteem. And
mhm,
I think Christians are in a more advantageous spot because, as you said, in the Bible has so many scriptures that tell us who we are, right?
yeah,
You are
yeah.
an overcomer, you are this, you are loved, all these different things that can help us what we call reframe some of these negative thoughts and
Mhm.
replace them with what God actually thinks about us. So
Yes, yes, that's good,
Yeah,
man.
that's awesome, man.
Good. Wow. I wanted you said something before I wanted to go back to because I think this is a thing that all of us do. All men have done this. And that is the feeling you don't want to be alone, right?
Mm,
And even so when you were dating, you had the girl on side when your main girl wasn't acting right. When you get married, that turns to that's the porn stash. That's the porn that you
mhm,
turn to when your wife's acting out or she's not. You guys aren't seeing eye to eye, whatever. And we turn to that for comfort, right? And we try to seek intimacy from that. And what we really want, and one of the reasons that I, you know, found it like fruitless to continue watching porn was because it wasn't meeting the objective that I wanted, and which was I want to grow my intimacy with my wife. I like this is not helping that at all. So if I do that, so stating who you are, what your goals are, and objectively looking, is this actually going to achieve the goal that I said that I have? Because it takes some real, mental gymnastics to make that right. If you just said, this is what I want, so why am I doing this? If this is what you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. That's just kind of how I work through it. But talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's quicker, it's easier, and let's also, because I think when we sometimes we think about men and pornography, we tend to think about single men. There's a ton of married men who
Oh my goodness.
right? Okay, just yeah, we all
Yeah.
know,
No, it does not stop in after marriage. Yes.
and the reason sometimes that men watch pornography even while they're married is because they don't want to be rejected.
Right.
I think people don't understand that. Like,
Yes.
I think
Yes.
women think like, oh, he'll get over it or whatever. And your boy is just like, listen, I could just go over here, instead of going into a restaurant and trying to wait, I can just drive through like right now. I can get done right now, easy. You know what I'm saying? And be done with it.
Right.
You're right. There is a deflation that happens after we watch pornography and we masturbate or whatever. After we have completed that act, yes, it feels good in the moment. Let's not lie about that, right? Let's be honest about it. All right. It feels good.
Wouldn't do it if it didn't.
Exactly. Right. But then afterwards, there is a deflating, and sometimes we feel more empty than we did before when we did the act.
It's real.
The other part of pornography that is really bad is that it is sometimes it can get progressively worse. And I don't just in frequency, I mean in type, right? So at first you're looking at a man and a woman, then you're looking at two women and a man, then you're looking at three men and two women, and then you're looking at, bestiality. There are men who go all the way to the extreme, all right? So we do have to be careful with pornography because it becomes an easy fix for stuff in our life. And obviously that's not what, how God would want us to achieve intimacy or whatever. And the more we watch it, the less we want to try to be truly intimate with people in the world, because it has become an addiction that is so easy to do. Men may shy away from approaching women now. Just like, I can get this over here. They become more shy, less courageous, less bold, less brave, less out there. All of this stuff happens as a result of watching pornography.
Absolutely. Mercy, Lord.
Yeah, and it's so many detrimental effects that we don't even realize because you are building these pathways, and it can be addictive. And the reason why you have to increase in the intensity is because you get these down regulation of your dopamine receptors, right? And you need more stimulation to get the same feeling that you once did, right? And so that ratchets it up. But here's the thing, that overstimulation, obviously that's not real. But you don't know how many guys that I have, young men that I have in my practice, where they're having ED issues because they have built this pathway of pleasure from this overstimulating fake stuff over here, where when it comes to a real live situation, it just doesn't hit the same.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of women think that, well, my husband is, I do clear up something. My husband is watching pornography because he's not attracted to me anymore. That's not always the case.
No.
Not. However, though, after a while, it can affect what happens between you and your wife in the bedroom, obviously, because what woman can live up to a limitless cachet of video and I mean, seriously, and pictures of women? A matter of things. She can never live up to that. And I hope and pray that a man never gets to the point where he is, with his wife intimately, and his mind is on the things that he saw. I think that is an abuse of what God originally.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know what? Women can tell. when you're charged up off of something that's not them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They feel that energy, you know, and it doesn't feel so intimate to them,
Mm-hmm.
you know, either, right? So you're not really doing you're doing a disservice to yourself and your intimate life when you do that. But it's such an easy crutch because we don't like to get rejected. So like, how do we deal with rejection in a healthy way that, you know, does not lead down to further dysfunction?
Mm.
So, you know, this may sound really just sort of, I don't know, on the surface deep about it, but in many of the clients that I counsel, whatever the issue is, even beyond sex, a lot of things have to be addressed through a conversation, right?
Yeah.
We're just
Yep.
not, we're not willing to talk about it.
Yep.
Lavelle just said a minute ago, until he, you know, was willing to talk about it, that's when his healing began.
Yep.
Men sometimes, you know, sort of so pride filled, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really,
Yes.
at the end of the day, that we
Yes.
want to bring this up to our wife and say, listen, this is not just something that I'm just doing because I'm some animal. This is a need for me. This is I need to be intimate with you, and this is what I need. The 5 love languages are really good as well. I really stand by them, you know, and just in terms of, you know, figuring out how you receive love beyond sex and outside of sex. But even as it pertains to sex, and honestly, I'm counseling a few couples right now. I'm trying to think what I can say. I can't, so I'll leave that alone. I'm not going to say it. All right, but needless to say, there are couples that I'm counseling who have been intimate. They can count on one hand how many times they've been intimate in a year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know. Yeah. Yeah.
They'll say, "Nah, man." You know what I'm saying? So I mean, but seriously though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a problem, and many of them are afraid to have a conversation.
Yes. Yes.
You know, hey, I really need this. I need help. This is how I feel close to you. It's not just me wanting to, you know, get one off real quick. This is how I get close to you, right? So I think we have to, again, start with understanding their feelings, getting the language, and then being willing to have that conversation with their significant other.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost feel like we need a rewiring or retooling as men on what real intimacy is and what that looks like.
Yeah.
Because it's been so skewed for so many years of the wrong kind of training and the wrong stimulation that we don't even know what real sex looks like. You know, what that looks like, right? Because all the other things that we see. And so I feel like these conversations, because, you know, we stop at, you know, the physical a lot of times and stop at trying to, I always said this before, penetrate her body, but we're not penetrating her mind. We're not penetrating her spirit. We're not going on a deeper level, you know, and that really affects the level of intimacy. And, you know, good sex has all 3 components in that, right? Wow. It's got the physical, you're mentally connect, you're spiritually bond. I mean, all of that. That's great. That's good sex, right? And so I think that's what we all aim for, but we just don't know how to get there, right? But healing from trauma has to occur in order to get to that point. And that's why these conversations are just vital to have. I know it is getting late. We're over an hour. I don't want to keep you guys for too long, but this has been phenomenal. And Lee, anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to ask? This is your time, man.
Sorry about that. Wow. Doc, I just will say one, thank you for just sharing these pieces, because some of these pieces, even as you're sharing, are being, brought together. The pieces are coming together like, okay, have this conversation. Even my idea of who I am now, like I have grown children, my children are grown, I have grandchildren now. So now I was looking for meaning in this phase of my life. So some of the things that you shared in this space. And I appreciate you as well, Doc, just for having this. But it's helped me to, I need to spend some alone time, you know, because I literally would run the other direction. So the biggest thing is the therapy, stand into therapy, and really, dude, I've been to 3 different therapists, and even had an incident with one of my therapists that, dude, I'm telling you, it's been a journey, but I am really committed to this space of healing because I want the next phase of my life not to include this that I'm passing on, because I have 3 sons. I have a daughter that I'm seeing pieces of me in them. And it's not to say that they're all bad, but it's some pieces that are fragmented with me. So ultimately, Doc, do you couple anything with, I'm calling you Doc John, I'm calling both of you guys Doc, but John, do I couple something with therapy to kind of get in a, I don't know if it's a master class or a graduate course, I don't know, but to get this thing to really be aggressive about it, because Quentin knows I've been in this spaces of trying to navigate relationships, and it's just like I don't know if I'm doing it right, and I'm having questions and still trying to connect with what my marriage was and heal from that. What do you do? Do you just go therapy and just ride that? Is there some things to do to couple with that?
Question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Absolutely, man. I will say this. They came out with an article some time ago. Forgive me, I don't know the date, but it basically said that men are in a friendship recession. Friendship recession, right?
Wow. That's big.
Surprised. I know I've said this a lot, man, throughout this, this podcast tonight, but you'd be surprised how many men do not have one friend, right, that they can share some of the stuff you shared with me, right? They don't have anybody that they trust, that they hang out with on a regular basis. And I will tell you, as a counselor, one of the first questions we ask is, tell me about your support network or your support system. If somebody says to me, well, I don't really talk to anybody, I'm in the house, all that kind of stuff, I mean, bells and fireworks and red flags just start to go off immediately. You know this, doctor, healthcare. That's major. Your support system is critical to who you are as a person, and even from a spiritual standpoint, God has designed us to be in connection. So number one, we need to have and cultivate friendships and relationships around us where, and it's not just being held accountable, that is important too, but someone who will listen, right? With impartiality and without judgment. I just had a friend the other day. I just called him out of the blue, just check on him, say how he's doing. Man, he sent me a message back and said, man, you don't even understand what that has done for me, man. You're the only person that calls and checks on me to see what's going on in my life without asking me for something. Do you understand how deep that is, man?
Yeah.
Up on the back, because I didn't think he was doing, what I thought was good at that moment. So first, getting a support system around you. I will say coaching is always good in addition to therapy. I know Myron has a group. I know you've got something going on you were talking to me about. There are a lot of men groups out there that you can even engage in virtually. So I definitely would say that. The third thing I would say is this, and I'm big on this. Men, we need hobbies. I know that sounds like so and small, but I'm gonna tell you right now, a hobby changes. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you what it is, because I have, sometimes I store a lot of anxious energy in me now. Anxious, just worried about stuff. I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes. I just wake up in the morning, just early on my phone. My wife is like, yo, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? So I have to put that energy somewhere into something. So I started doing woodworking, man. Got on YouTube. Man, dude, I was in the garage every day. I built half the stuff in my house. This stuff back here on the wall, I made it.
Yeah.
Myself.
Oh, wow.
Just doing it. But I'm not doing that to toot my own horn. What I'm saying is it helps to sort of displace some of that energy that we might put into pornography, that we might put into other negative, maladaptive behaviors. I spend time doing that, and it helps. And it doesn't be that for you. But Dr. Q, if I can just say this real quick and I'll be done. I know I'm talking a lot, man.
No, that's great. Good.
When you look at Genesis, man, of the Bible, man, and the Bible says God created the heavens and the earth and all that kind of stuff, breathed the breath of life into the man. And then the Bible says he stepped back and he said, it is good, right?
Mm.
He made something and said that it is good.
Mm.
When I make a chair or a desk or a stool, man, there is no there is no competition to the amount of satisfaction that I feel when I have accomplished something. And
Wow.
as men are wired to
That's
do
holy.
it. We're
That's holy.
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
we have something like that we can accomplish, it truly helps us. For you, you know, it may be something different, but I think a hobby would be really good. You know, at the very least, take your mind off of some of the stuff that you're thinking about in your. All right, I'm gonna shut up now. I'm not trying to.
No, that's good.
That's holy. That's Holy Ghost. That's Holy Ghost, man. Wow. That's holy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's rich because, you know, you look at blue zones, and there's one in particular in Japan that, you know, these people, they have their own gardens, they have activities that they engage in. And there's this concept called ikigai, and that is like when you're in your flow, you know, and so that actually is a hack to long living. When you can find something that you can get into, that you're good at, that the world needs, and that, you know, you can even make money from, like that is like the ultimate ikigai, right? And when you're in flow, and I used to feel that when I operated doing robotic surgery, I was just like, hours would go by and I was just creating, you know, it was just this great thing, right? And this great sense of accomplishment. And it's almost like gives your life a purpose, right? And
Wow.
and yes, and so when you are, particularly when it's your God-given purpose, that helps you with your identity, right? Right. And that helps.
That's
You
good.
know, now you're knowing yourself. Now you can be in position to present the healthy whole person of yourself to whoever it is that, you know, you're attracting. Hopefully it's the same thing, right?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
watch this. Here's the bonus benefit. Women love it.
Talk about it, Doc. Talk about it, Doc.
Doc, when I started making this stuff around here,
Yeah.
good. I'm
Yeah.
good. I ain't got no worry. She loves me. She like, yo, I mean, dude, that's all I'm gonna say. That's all.
Hey,
I
hey,
receive
that's
it.
game.
That's game. Hey, that's a hack, Doc. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good, man. No, a lot, man. There were so many nuggets in here. I can't even, you know, we'll have to review this again. But, you know, I like the part about, you know, the isolation, but I also being in community is so important. You know, being, you know, their coaching programs. You know, I have a program, Woodsman program, and this is one of the things that we tackle is this sexual trauma, because sex and the issues dealing with sex is so front and center in so many of our minds that, you know, we got to get healed from this stuff. You know, we have to be whole from this stuff. And so we have to deal with these tough issues. So, I mean, you know, there are resources out there, but being in community, being with like-minded people that will push you, that will, you know, challenge you, right? And being active and finding your purpose and just really understand yourself. And we understand ourselves through our relationships.
It's real.
Right. With other people. Right.
Yeah.
And brother, I don't know how many, I mean, Liddell is probably, I'm gonna gush on you a little bit, man, but you are like, he's one of the best people I know, like just good heart. Like anyone he comes into contact with, I mean, he's giving them a word, he's making them laugh. I mean, he has so much, you know, and it's just it's just great to see, you know, that you are on the track to getting healing and getting whole and being the best version of yourself, you know. So man, it takes a lot to get on Front Street like this and to talk about some of these deep. So man, let me just thank you for being willing to do this. And thank you, John, for also coming on and giving your input. This is great. I'd like to do this again at some point if you guys are willing, but Man, thank you. Any closing remarks, John? Anything you want to leave anybody with?
Just for the men, man, I just, take heed to what, Liddell shared in his story. And if you are a person that, needs help and you need time to process, man, find a therapist, find a group, find a community at least, or at least a friend that you can talk to.
Yes.
And, start that process of healing, because you will
Yeah.
see benefits not only in your relationships, but in your marriage and in your sex life as well. I truly believe that. So please
Yes.
pursue help as soon as possible.
Yes, yes. Prioritize your healing. That's what I would say. Prioritize your healing. What did Myron say? Get healed or die trying.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's a phrase we can all live by. But thank you guys again, man, for a great discussion. All right.
All right.
All right. We'll do it again sometime, but y'all have a good night.
All right. Thanks so much, man. Thank you, John.